Hello lads and lasses, and welcome to episode 65 of the Roker Rapport podcast. I am your host James Copley, and this week we are joined as ever by Connor Bromley.
Hello. I don't think I'm the main event this week, like normal.
Although Chris Cam has put in the notes, our producer, Miss Blythe 2009.
Miss Blythe?
Miss Blythe, yeah.
What do you mean? Was that Miss Blythe 2009?
It must have been. That's what's going on. We're also joined by the North East football correspondent for The Times, George Caulkin. Welcome.
Hello, thank you.
Thanks for coming on.
Only 1 week late.
Only 1 week late. And we're also joined by the North East football correspondent for Skysport, Keith Downie.
Hello, thank you for having me. Only 2 weeks late.
Champion. Right, as usual this week we'll go on to the 3-word review. This is just kind of 3-word review of the match.
Oh, this will be uplifting.
Yeah, can't blame Coleman. Fucking gutless cunts. Plan for future. Kyle Tate says, topped myself again. John Ridley said, Rodwell was diving. Paul Noble got in the airport. Reece Benson, the embarrassment increases. Tom Atkinson, just absolutely pathetic. Alex McCain, Clark Salter shite. Niall Bromley, bunch of frauds. As ever with these, it's kind of the same theme, isn't it, really?
Yeah. Never had a happy 3-word review.
No, I can't remember the last time we did a podcast and we won.
It's been 10 games.
10 games. 10 weeks we've been doing this without a win. And we'll write and do Roker Rapport TV as well.
Yeah.
Terrible. Right, we'll fly into it. George, we'll go to you first.
All right.
For those listeners who might not be familiar, could you tell them a little about what you do and your past experiences with Sunderland?
Well, I sort of do those 3-word reviews, except in 900 words. I mean, possibly without the swear words, or they would be asterisked out. Well, I mainly write about North East football for The Times, but get around doing other things too, and I've done that for 20 years. I'm from Durham, so this is my part of the world. Unfortunately, I've not seen as much of Sunderland this season as I normally would, or as I would like to. Having said that, having heard those 3-word reviews, perhaps there's a benefit to it, but we don't cover Championship football as much as Premier League, sadly. So I've been sort of off elsewhere, certainly for most Saturdays, but I've been following it from afar and obviously reading a lot about it and listening to stuff about the club's plight, and it's incredibly distressing.
And what would you pinpoint as kind of the catalysts in Sunderland's downfall?
Ooh, well, that's a very good question. I think you could probably make yourself dizzy looking for turning points in Sunderland's kind of recent history. But I mean, it all comes down to Ellis Short. He's the one. What's the phrase I'm looking for? He's the one.
Constant.
Yes, he's the one constant at the club, and it's been a series of horrific decisions. They've been like, drunken gamblers chasing bad bets. They've taken horrific decisions and then followed them up with more horrific decisions. They've put people in control of the club or in positions of authority at the club, should be nowhere near it, who are sort of not qualified to do the jobs they do. And it's been catastrophic. There's been a sort of institutionalised arrogance at the top of the club. I think there's been this theory or this feeling that when they survived in the Premier League, and I was saying to you just before, I hated that notion of them staying up was somehow a miracle, because that isn't a miracle. What is a miracle is what Leicester did in winning the title, or it's what Clough's Forest did, or it's what Bobby Robson's Ipswich Town. That's a miracle, not giving yourself the right to be shit the next season. That is not a miracle, and Sunderland should be better than that. But I think that it was almost as if those 3 or 4 games that Sunderland needed to win to get them over the line, as if that somehow defined them, as opposed to the 30-odd games in which they were terrible beforehand. And they've been bad for a long time, and I certainly didn't expect them to be this bad this season. I mean, I would be lying if I said that, but that losing is absolutely ingrained in the club, and Short got away with it for too long, and I think that's partly because blame was a shifting target. He changed managers so often, he changed sporting directors and directors of football, players came and went, and because of that change, he sort of got away with not being at fault, or not being the only thing at fault. But he's now given up and fucked off, and
absentee owner now, isn't he?
Yeah, and is clearly not, bothered, and it's very, very sad. But he's been absolutely catastrophic owner.
Keith, same question to you really. What do you agree with George's statement? Where do you pinpoint the blame for some?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there is one person not one person. I don't think there's one thing or one element that you can blame. I mean, I've been here for 4.5 years now. I started my first day in the job was the day before Paolo Di Canio got sacked. And it just seems to have been sort of, obviously, aside from these end of the season heroics, aside from that, it just seems to have been one disaster after another that's led you to this place. And I think George touched on it, and I couldn't have agreed any more. I think sort of the recruitment, and I don't just mean in terms of player purchases, and I'm talking about behind the scenes as well, and putting people in positions that were then in that position to make these catastrophic errors has led Sunderland to where they are now. And obviously the club are trying to claw that back, but that's difficult when there's no money to spend behind the scenes or on players. I don't think you can say, I honestly don't think you can say it's one thing. I've seen similar things myself in previous jobs in Scotland with Rangers where a lot of mistakes were made, and it's amazing how many sort of parallels you notice along the way, and I'm kind of like, I've been here before, I've seen this before, and it is quite similar. The difference with Rangers to Sunderland, obviously Rangers went into administration and liquidation, but the difference they had when they were relegated or demoted to the bottom tier, they still had 52,000 coming along every week packing the place out. And I think the problem at the moment for Sunderland is it looks like the fans are giving up. Most of the fans are giving up at the moment, and I think that for me is the most worrying thing of all.
Well, yeah. You get into that sort of conversation about what the point of a football club is and what the point of your support is, and of course, for all of that, it's your own personal history, it's your family, it's your mates, it's your city, it's your town, it's where you're from, it's what you do. It's just always but there has to be, the club has to give something back, or there has to be, you want to feel like you're part of something bigger than you, and you want to be part of something, that stands for something. And I don't know what Sunderland stopped standing for something in terms of having any kind of identity a long time ago in terms of on the pitch. But fans here have seen 2 home wins since December 2016. That's right. There has to be something, there has to be something more of it. And going to the match spoils the day now. It's that gets in the way of having a good day. It's not anything else. And it's incredibly sad. I mean, I would never criticise people for not going because, I think when you look across the North East, I'm kind of blown away by the number of people that do go to games, especially in terms of, not winning things.
I think people and Sunderland fans are quite annoyed with the coverage in the national media at the moment, not necessarily from you two gentlemen, but I think they get frustrated that the attendance is focused on so much. I mean, you have opinions on this, Connor, don't you?
But yeah, I mean, there's 28,000. I know that's not necessarily how many were there, but 28,000 tickets sold on Saturday, and yet the BBC's posting articles about people leaving on 65 minutes when we're 2-0 down to 10 men, won 2 home games in the last 14 months, won the least amount of games in the last 10 years of any football league.
Listen, I've not seen the piece you're talking about. Where the point I was making earlier was I was at the match against Villa the other week, and I think with 5 minutes to go, there must have been a couple of thousand supporters left in the stadium. And by the way, don't blame them at all. I would have left. I don't mean a supporter. I don't blame. I just mean this sort of negativity.
No,
I think they're finding it difficult to find a positive somewhere in that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I didn't express what I meant to say very well. But what I mean is, Sunderland have bricks and mortar at the stadium, and they have bricks and mortar at the Academy of Light and things like that. But a football club is a collection of people, and it's those people who go and watch it. That's what the whole point of a football club is. And at the minute, you've got something at Sunderland that is exactly as you say, Keith. People are drifting away from it because it doesn't reflect them anymore, and it doesn't represent them anymore. Apart from for all those, sort of historical ties, there's nothing to kind of buy into, and that is incredibly sad.
Do you think we should be looking at some sort of fans protest? There is a meeting actually in the Peacock pub from the fan organisation Red and White Army tomorrow night. I think that starts at 7. Yeah, so I'd encourage fans to go along to that if they want to initiate some action. But George, do you think that Sunderland fans should be protesting? Should we be doing more? Should we be taking a stand?
Well, so I don't think that's my job to say that fans should be. What I would say is they're absolutely 100% within their rights to do that, and it's not about sort of expecting the team and the club to win things. It's about saying that things should be better than this, and it's about saying what the club is going through at the moment is, and has gone through over the last few months and years, is unacceptable. Without me encouraging people to do it, if I was a Sunderland fan, I would be. And part of me is kind of quite surprised that it's taken so long to get to this point. But then as I said before, I think that's also because blame has been a shifting target, and I think people have sort of given Ellis Short the benefit of the doubt. I don't think he's deserved that, but I can sort of understand it because of the way seasons have finished and because he's changed managers so regularly, and so there's always been this cycle of blame starting again and again and again. But no, I mean, I think people have sort of said, what's the point of protesting when he's already put the club up for sale and he's not around? But I think that in some ways that's the point. It's about making noise, and it's about reminding him and the rest of us and the world that Sunderland still exists. And I kind of wrote a few weeks ago, Sunderland was once known for the Roker Rapport, and that was a sound. I mean, that was a noise. There's nothing wrong with making noise and with making sound. So I mean, if people are protesting, they're doing it because they care and they want things to be better. And so how can you criticise that?
I think what concerns us as well as fans is the general apathy around the club. As you said, there's not that noise being made at the moment, and that is a concern for a historically passionate fan base.
I find it sort of frustrating as well watching Newcastle, and I know I don't want to talk about them too much, but they've got that Gallagher flags. They are very vocal and have been for 10 years about how much they don't like Mike Ashley, and they get almost, I would say, rightly sympathy about it because he is a nightmare owner. And I look at Sunderland and we don't look arsed, like, in a lot of ways, and I understand why the media coverage can lend that way, because the stadium looks empty on the telly, and there's been no protests, no stand outside the Murray Gates with the picket signs and stuff. And I've sort of find it as though I haven't done my job. We have a platform with Roker Rapport and we've not done anything with it.
But I mean, you're right. And I suppose that's the way it has to go. I think there has to be a movement from supporters first to complain about what's happening, and then that gets picked up on by the media and it's reported. And Newcastle fans have done, quite a few eye-catching things over the years that has got a lot of attention. In terms of militancy, there isn't much militancy at Newcastle, in spite of the perception of them that they're always rebelling. There's been no organised opposition to Ashley, apart from the kind of Ashley out campaign and the Sack Pardew campaign. Yeah. But those were very limited numbers of people. There's been no huge demonstrations. There's been no mass walkouts compared to Man United supporters when the Glazers took over.
Green and yellow scarves.
And especially compared to Liverpool, I think it's almost a fault of North East supporters. I mean, I'm one myself, so but it's that loyalty thing. It's actually not wanting to rebel. It's about being loyal. It's about turning up, and it's about bearing witness and all that kind of stuff. But it has been it's a failing because, I think people should be unhappy with how their club is being, and clubs are being run. But yeah, Newcastle have got attention for doing things because it's been sort of eye-catching, I think.
We'll lighten the mood a bit. Keith, what is the most mental experience you've had on deadline day? Because I bet it's a bit hectic at times.
Let me think.
Have you ever had a dildo inserted in?
I've not in my ear anyway. Let me think. There was actually an incident that night, actually, at Sunderland with a fan that didn't actually get reported. What was it? There was I think one of the betting companies were offering odds for someone to get a shirt on fire of the opposing team.
Wow.
So a lovely gentleman drove down from Glasgow. I didn't know him, by the way, and had a Newcastle strip. He was trying to set on fire at the back of us. And it was the same night as the aforementioned dildo evening. Now that obviously got a little bit more coverage. We were just about to go live, and the guy came running, and luckily there's a couple of security guards that managed to bundle him over. And I think as a result of that and what happened elsewhere at Everton that night, that's why now
you're in the ground, aren't you?
Yeah, that's why we're in the ground and there's no fans here. And in a way it kind of takes a little bit of the drama away, but it means we're a lot safer.
I bet it was quite intimidating though.
It was a little bit. I mean, he was hovering around for hours as well, like waiting for his move. So Sunderland were great. They actually brought down a couple of extra security guards to help us out just in case. And And of course, if you think about it, you're standing at the camera talking, you don't have a clue what's going on over your shoulder. And I can just see my cameraman looking around like I could tell something was going on, and I'm still trying to talk at the same time. Anything could happen. So that was that. But in terms of the footballing side of things, I've not had that many big transfers on deadline day up here, whether it be Sunderland or Newcastle or Middlesbrough. There hasn't been a huge amount on deadline day in the 4.5 years I've been here. Probably not the biggest story, but the one that I found ridiculous was just in the window just there when I was at Newcastle, and we had shots of Alexander Mitrovic heading out to Brussels on a flight, and a private jet arrived there, and then it all fell through, and they ended up having a choice of 3 or 4 clubs, and he did part of his Fulham medical out there in Brussels before he eventually signed for Fulham. So that, in terms of transfers, not a massive one because it was a loan deal. But yeah, I mean, it sometimes it gets a little bit sort of depressing because you want to be the one who has huge deals. I mean, I think my predecessor David Craig had Andy Carroll when he signed for Liverpool that time from Newcastle and was flown there in a helicopter. I've had nothing like that. But yeah, this deadline day up at Newcastle was probably the busiest I've been, with Slimani and Dubravka both arriving on the day, Mitrovic heading out. I think one of my first ones I did at Sunderland was 2 or 3 arrived, but again I think it was like Sebastian Coates and a couple of those. Again, it
underwhelming.
Yeah. At the time we were excited about it. This guy coming in from Liverpool, Uruguayan international, but again it didn't really pay off.
How do you feel when like, I find it frustrating when I watch Sky Sports News on deadline day and you come on, I'm like, oh, get in, it's Keith. Yeah. I'm like, come on, Dad, man, brother, come on, watch Keith.
Happening. Yeah.
And you just say the same things. Like, do you find it frustrating when they're coming here and you have absolutely nothing new?
Of course. Well, I mean, of course, we want to be busy. Of course, we want to be sort of breaking the big stories, but at the same time, we try to get around all the clubs. I mean, things have changed recently, I would say, in the last couple of transfer windows, and we've not just gone to clubs for the sake of it. Like, certainly the one in January there, they said, look, we're only going to come to you. They set up a plan for every hour, and like, we're only going to come to you if something happens, so let us know in half an hour if there's something, or if you can move it on, or just put a little new twist on the story, or just give the viewer something new. We have changed that. I think in the past we used to kind of be quite sort of religiously go around every ground. We don't do that so much now. But yeah, of course it's frustrating. I don't want to be standing there for 17 hours talking about nothing, trying to make things up. I want to be busy and talking about things that are going on, and that's why this one in January was good.
Are you looking forward to Jan Mvia? Like, that was so close on.
Yeah.
Well, it seemed to be close.
Remember that one?
It was last deadline day where he'd been on loan.
He was pictured down, and he put a
he'd Instagrammed it saying that they didn't call.
And then there was a guy on Twitter who said he'd been talking to him, and all the rumours circulated.
So you've just reminded me about that. So that day I was actually in the stadium. I think we were at Stadium of Light that day, and that was excitement for us. He pictured that, and great if we get the shots of him arriving, maybe we'll grab an interview with him. So when that doesn't happen, we're gutted. We want the transfers to happen, whatever club you're covering.
Are the clubs quite accommodating with you in terms of feeding you information?
What I would say is on deadline day, you seem to have a lot better communication with them than you would on a normal day, because that's because they're quite understanding. They know that you're standing in the cold for all those hours, and they want to try. I mean, listen, they're not going to tell you everything. In fact, sometimes they don't tell you anything, and you don't just speak to the clubs. You're obviously in touch with agents and other people in the game as well. And it's all judgment calls. Sometimes if the club go quiet, you're not getting much from them. You can kind of read between the lines that you think there's something happening because they don't want it getting out there. So it's just pure judgment calls, and you just make sure you speak to enough people to allow you to believe that is the case. Sometimes you're not 100%, but you've just got to go with your gut instinct on something.
Are there any Sunderland managers that you think were let go too early, George? Because for me, the one that really rankles, and the one that I think's the biggest missed opportunity, disappointment for me, was Martin O'Neill.
Well, he would agree with that, and I've stayed in contact with him, and I would count him as a friend now, because I cover Ireland, and I always go for a cup of tea with him before matches and things like that. And it's a source of, even now, it's a source of great pain for him. And things felt tired towards the end with Martin, and I think he was tired of dealing with what he had to deal with. And obviously, Di Canio came in, and the club was Di Canio, wasn't it? Yeah, and the club stayed up. Yeah, he later referred to him as that managerial fraud. I remember, Martin, but he should have been. It felt like he should have been the one. The boyhood Sunderland fan. The fella that used to listen to Charlie Early on the wireless when he was a kid growing up. And I distinctly remember the press conference when he arrived, and it was sort of like, what do you see as the template? And he says, well, we're a million miles away, but I want us to play like Barcelona and things like that. And you kind of thought, something special might happen. But it's very different. It's very difficult to sort of rewrite history and think what might have been, because it did feel, it felt stale by the end, and I'm not sure that that's a reflection on him necessarily. I think it's a reflection of what was happening at the club, and the club has chewed up good managers. Things felt very, very exciting under Steve Bruce for a while. I know that the down period with Steve kind of carried on for a lot longer, but he's gone on and done good things elsewhere, and but I think we look back at that season when they finished 10th and Darren Bent's goals and all that kind of stuff, and think that was a kind of opportunity, and that and of course I look back to it is pretty much all of them. You look back at Keane and how exciting that was, and how the club needed a spark, and the city needed a spark under it, and he gave it. And
I feel like we've lacked, the club seems to have lacked discipline since Keane left, for me, behind the scenes. That's just the impression I get. I don't know, you two are more informed than us, but...
Do you mean discipline into? Well, I mean, no. They've lacked structure. They've lacked discipline. They've lacked people in the right places. They've lacked, they've lacked football people after Niall Quinn left. They've lacked, and I think that was something that Martin suffered from. He was brought in. He was effectively brought in by Niall, and then Niall ended up going fairly quickly. And I think Martin suffered for that. And they were dealing with. The club carried on and it functioned, but it was, in the face of it, but I think behind the scenes it was very dysfunctional. I think it was very dysfunctional. But you also, of course, Sam Allardyce. That was such a perfect fit. I was around at Newcastle when he was at Newcastle, and it was the opposite. It was the wrong fit. It's interesting how a few miles and a few years, and that how somebody can be the right fit at the right time and all that. And he was perfect.
Yeah, from the minute he walked in the door. Just behind the scenes and the way he spoke to everyone, and just kind of galvanised everything. And I think he came in at a right time for him as well. I think he was, at the time when he got that job, I can't remember where he'd been before that, but he was looking to get back in, and then suddenly, 6 months, a year on, West Ham it was, he'd been sacked there, hadn't he? And then there you are, he's the England manager.
And he had that bit of swagger, and he had that arrogance. It's quite funny, I was thinking about this, about David Moyes, who, on the face of it, there was logic behind his appointment, and particularly because Ellis Short said he'd wanted him for so many times. So
most fans were very pleased as well.
Yeah,
they were at the time,
and the idea of having a club builder and things like that. And famously, he then said in his second match that we are in a relegation battle.
After a good performance.
But there was that. Really, Allardyce said exactly the same thing.
Yeah,
but he did it. He did it with a swagger. He did it with a swagger, and he did it with arrogance, and he did it with a bit of bullishness. And what Sunderland needed at that point was someone to lift them. And David came in, and I know, he said himself what he was trying to do was he was trying to promise low and then deliver high. But what it did was it's whatever momentum was at the club, it sucked it out. And they never got that.
But should it though, George? If you're a professional footballer and your manager says, "I think we're going to be in a relegation," if I'm a player, that wouldn't bother me. I'd want to go out there and prove him wrong. I personally didn't think that was as big an issue as a lot of people made.
So I don't know if it's just about the players. I think it was about the whole mood at the club, and that's what I mean about the right person at the right time. I think his personality. I think the dourness of his personality was not what Sunderland needed. If a manager is the person that that is the face of the club or the company or whatever it is, then that's not what Sunderland needed at that point. They needed somebody to lift, because they'd finished that season on a high. They'd finished that season it would probably all have gone anyway, but there was a depression to the way he spoke and the way he behaved, and I know why he did it, but it just wasn't what was needed. They needed a spark, and he didn't provide that.
I felt with Chris Coleman arriving that Sunderland had that. I remember I actually got asked to write an opinion piece for our website back when, just after Simon Grayson had left, and he said, "Look, who do you think it should be?" Whatever. And at that stage, I remember the name was getting banded around with managers of League One and League Two clubs, and weren't anybody. And I remember saying at the time, "Look, Sunderland." I remember writing a piece in Sunderland just needs someone who's going to try and make people smile again. And the one that instantly I thought of was Ali McCoy. So although he hadn't done a great job at Rangers in latter times, and I know him well, and I thought he would have come in. When I didn't even think for a second they could have got Coleman. I think we were all so surprised So when Coleman arrived, I thought, this is perfect. This is exactly what Sunderland are looking for here. But again, that's the thing. It's a question of timing, isn't it? He's not no money to spend.
the club did a little drinks thing with Martin Bain and Coleman just before Christmas, and it's, you know, I'm sure it sounds a bit incestuous, but anyway, it's quite nice. They you know, you journalists, reporters, whatever, meet them just slightly, you know, away from the scenes and you have a chat. Anyway, it was all fine, and I had a couple of beers, not Darren Gibson, something like that. I had a couple of beers anyway, and I went over to Coleman towards the end of the evening, and said, "What the fuck are you thinking?" And I did that not out of disrespect to him, and certainly not out of disrespect to Sunderland, because I was delighted that he'd arrived. But anyway, it was meant as a joke, and he took it well. But his answer was absolutely everything that you'd want someone to say about a North East club, because he said, "Well, this could be the biggest club. This could be the biggest job I get. Sunderland might very well be the biggest club I could manage. And why can't I be the one that turns it around? Why can't it be me?" And you know, and we had a bit of to and fro and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's the sort of, in some ways, that's the saddest thing about what's happening. That's not the saddest thing about what's happening now. That's one of the sad things about what's happening now, is that he arrived thinking about Sunderland as a big club and as a club with stature, and as a very similar to Benitez at Newcastle, now that I think about it, you know, thinking about them in quite an old-fashioned way, that this is a big club, that you know, here is the potential, and I'm the person who can turn it around. And obviously he hasn't done it, and he hasn't got the tools to do it.
I mean, I think every one of us that evening asked him that same question. I think we were all just so surprised. I think by the time George had, he'd just had a few extra beers, but we all asked him that, and I said to him, I said, "Look, if you'd waited a couple of weeks, you probably could have got West Brom, or you probably could have got Stoke, or you probably could have got Swansea." He's like, "Yeah, but I wanted to be here. I wanted to take I see Sunderland as a massive club, and I want to go somewhere where I can make a difference." As George says, I want to turn the ship around, and so you can. So I mean, honestly, we were amazed that, you know, that he would speak like this, and we thought, you know, this is the right man for the job. And then it's just sad that things have got to a stage now where it's all you're almost at the stage where it's too late to do anything about it, you know.
And do you think we are definitely headed for League One?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you never say definite, because you end up with egg in your face. But I'm just not seeing, like George, I've not been at every game this season. A couple of matches this season I've actually gone on my day off just to go and watch. I think I want to go along and see. So I went along to the Villa game on my day off. I went along to the game on New Year's Day. I think that was Barnsley was on my day off.
1-0.
And it just seems to be 2-0 or 3-0 home defeats every since. And I'm just not seeing enough fight from the players. And it's been said a million times, yes, they're in games, but there's absolutely no cutting edge, and there's a softness right down the spine of the team. And I think that we've all played football before, and when you're playing for a team that's losing and has no confidence, you start doing little things like you'll hide and you won't look for the ball, and you can just see that all over the pitch. And for me, there's probably too many young players in the team, and I know a lot of supporters are saying just put the kids in, just throw them in, but these kids, these could be damaged for the future moving forward, you know. And you feel for the likes of Madja and Ajaria, who's on loan, and Asoro and Honeyman, because they're getting put through the mill. So to answer your question, I'm not seeing enough from the squad, and even if you do stay up, is it anything to celebrate? I mean, I get the impression a couple of good mates are Sunderland supporters, and they're almost like, look, just put us out of misery now.
Yeah, we were saying this before the show, when we just kind of want to know now, don't we?
I mean, it's weird that they should have been killed off by now.
Yeah,
and they haven't.
Deserved
but to me, that feels like extending the misery for a bit longer, as opposed to them having a chance, because then, I mean, I can't see where it would come from. I just can't see where it would come from.
If you were to stay up now, would that be something you'd celebrate?
I personally wouldn't celebrate. I'd be happy. I mean, you know, I'd be pleased they're my football club, but I wouldn't take any great pride in it.
I'd be pinching myself. It's not going to happen. They've got no chance.
You shouldn't be celebrating that. You shouldn't be. That's the thing. That's the sad thing that's got to that level where you.
The only relegation I particularly recall celebrating was survival was the Poirier Great Escape. That was ridiculous.
That was mad.
And then obviously the time we relegated the Mags. But other than that, why celebrate surviving? This club should be doing more than surviving. It should be top. For me, it's a top 12 Premier League club. And it's never been that really since 2 years in 1999 to 2001.
Very true. Right, we're going to take a quick break. We shall be back in a second. Hello and welcome back to part 2. I'll throw straight into a question. Did you see the capitulation coming after last season's relegation, or were you both quite hopeful for this season? Did you think we'd bounce back?
I thought this season, I didn't think you bounced straight back, but I thought this season would be one of consolidation. And then I was actually surprised with the first couple of games, because the draw against Derby in the opening game, Sunderland probably deserved to win that. It was a great atmosphere that night, albeit the ground wasn't packed. Great atmosphere, good start to the season. Then came the win at Norwich, and I think it was a draw at Sheffield Wednesday. And I thought, hang on, they actually might do. And there's a couple of young boys coming through who we hadn't seen much of, the likes of Honeyman, and I've seen a bits and pieces of Gooch and whatnot. I thought we've got a chance here, and I did not see the capitulation that's happened since then. I thought mid-table would be a good benchmark, and then next season push for promotion. I didn't think it'd be like Newcastle, where they kind of just threw a bit of money at it when they went down. Sunderland hadn't done that, but I did feel they had enough to. So I must admit, I've been fairly shocked to see the demise.
What did you make of the summer business? Because I actually remember when we signed Wilson, McManaman,
Williams,
McGeady, Williams, Browning. I looked at it, I was like, you know what, they're decent signings, but they've been
Galloway. I thought Galloway was going to be
all
brilliant.
been so bad.
Galloway came in higher rated than Browning.
Yeah, like what did you make of the business at the time? Because
I thought they were decent. I thought, again, I didn't think they would get you straight back up, but I thought they were
solid
decent
players.
enough signings. But when you look through them, you've just named a few of them. There's probably one of them that's got decent experience. Two of them that's got decent experience in the Championship, McManaman and McGeady, and again they've been troubled with injury quite a lot. I mean, Browning, he looks a good player. He's an athlete. He's
the worst footballer I've ever seen. He can't play football.
Yeah.
He's good at.
Well, he's
do you not think he's a kind of guy when you watch him, you think he's got the potential to be decent if he actually
had some confidence?
He's got the attributes to be a player.
We say he's got a 50 pence piece foot, because he kicks it just like it's going to go that way. He just has no
injured
accuracy.
Out now for the rest of the season, so he's gone back to Everton.
I think I was hoping that there would be, Newcastle's relegation was sort of like a Carlsberg relegation, and they went down with momentum, which is incredibly rare. And obviously they then invested heavily. I suppose there were warning signs with a lack of investment in the summer, but no, I suppose I think what I sort of wanted was that the club should go through that process of learning how to win games again, remembering that nobody wants to get relegated, but actually winning games of football is fun, and it doesn't actually matter which level you do it at to a certain extent. To go to different clubs, to go to different stadiums, have a bit of fun, and then sort of rebuild like that. And I've as the club settled towards the bottom of the division, I never thought they would stay there. And it's become, it's obviously as the weeks and months have gone on, it's become obvious that they're just not going to kind of get out. But, it's so no. I definitely didn't see it coming. But
obviously, us as fans, we don't want to get relegated. We were pleased with the Great Escapes, pleased with staying in the Premier League and all of the kind of the glamour ties that brings. Do you think Sunderland may have been better served going down a couple of seasons ago?
Well, I suppose it wasn't used as an excuse to build. It was an excuse to go through the same cycle all over again. And I think that was the case. And I think the only aim was staying up. If the only aim of your football club is to stay up, then you'll soon realise that there's not a lot behind that. And I think because Adeshok thought he got away with it, I think he thought he could then do it again. And it's quite interesting what's happening in the Premier League this season. You have all those established clubs at the bottom. It's actually quite similar to Sunderland in some ways, that they come up, this isn't exactly the same as Sunderland, but they come up, they've stabilised, they've finished in a decent position, and then they've suddenly tried to get from there to the next step, and they actually lose their way completely. And the promoted teams who've come up only come up with one aim, and that's to stay up. And for a season or two, that can be very powerful. So, to answer your questions, in some ways, maybe it would have been better to go down and have that short, sharp shock, and have that as then an excuse to rebuild and do it properly. I think it was always deferred. Judgment was always deferred. He thought that he could appoint another manager, keep them up, and do it again, at the same time as collecting, a new group of players, a new group of substandard players, because you haven't got the right people doing the recruitment, and then the whole cycle starts again. And I think that sort of became Sunderland's identity, and it shouldn't have done. I didn't wish them to go down earlier, but I think in retrospect, if they'd had a more engaged ownership and it had happened earlier, then maybe they wouldn't be where they are now.
Would you agree, Keith?
I mean, it's difficult to tell because had they gone down 2 years ago, would Ellis Short have backed them? Would they have given money? I mean, it's been the perfect storm this year, hasn't it? By going down, players, certain players leaving, not being able to bring others in, players having to play too many games that probably, I think they'll agree, probably should have maybe moved on and had a fresh start before. They're probably playing too many matches, and then young lads coming into the team who haven't really had a chance before. So I mean, you just put all that together and it's been a bit of a nightmare. Had they gone down 2 years ago and Ellis Short had invested, then you would say things obviously would have looked a lot better, but we don't know that, so it's a difficult
the thing is,
question.
The financial situation was as bad 2 years ago. Like, people think that it's a new thing, that
he might not have had enough by then. He might have thought, well, hang on, we'll do kind of what Newcastle have done and get him back in. You don't know. We don't know.
A question from Jordan Ramsey here from Twitter. Is it finally time
of Twitter's fame? Of Twitter fame.
Of Twitter, yeah.
Okay.
Is it finally time to sack off this season and get the youngsters ready for next season? For me, it has to happen. The fans won't get on the back of the youngsters, and it will hugely help us next season in League One, giving experience to players like Emerald and Stryjek and Molyneux, etc.
Well, I've not seen those players, so I find it very difficult to sort of. I mean, all I would say is that theory's fine if those players are good enough, but. There is more experienced people than me in football would say that the danger there is that you're going to. It's not so much giving them experience; it could scar them at the moment. And does it stop fans getting on players' back if they're still losing games? I'm not sure. I'm not so sure about that. I don't think
we've seen that with Honeyman this season, haven't we? He gets a bit of stick.
I've got one of the things I'm looking forward to about going to League One is the fact that it might be the first time and probably only time in Sunderland's modern history that we'll have possibly 9 youth products in the team, 9 people from Sunderland or been in the system for years, and that kind of is how I think the club should be marketing itself. Like, if they want to do a season ticket renewal, it should be, you're getting represented by 11 Mackems on the pitch. And
but would you carry on saying that if you're not winning every week, or if you're losing every week?
See, I think you make a good point. That would go out the window. I think it would be easier to take, possibly, because you're always fond of your own players. You're going to give
your younger players more time. Certainly,
you can't sack off this season until this season is gone. I mean, I think they have to go through the motions and they have to do that. I mean, I think they have to.
But do you think this current group of players deserve that chance to get us out of it? The likes of Cattermole and O'Shea, and
they're contracted and they're on 40-odd grand a week.
Yeah,
so
I mean, the only thing I would say, I mean, no one is going to be sympathetic to those players because they're associated with failure. All I would say about the 2 players you mentioned there, Cattermole and O'Shea, is that for all the churn that there's been in the dressing room, manager after manager after manager have come back and picked them. Now there has to be a reason for that.
If you've had dealings with Cattermole and O'Shea, because they're scapegoats, if anything. I mean, do you think
I know O'Shea?
They are part of the problem?
I know John O'Shea, and I know he's a fantastic lad, and he cares, and if it
they both to be honest, they both are.
I mean, if his legs are gone, that's not his fault. I mean, again, I'm not wanting anybody. I don't think they deserve sympathy or anything like that. That would be absolutely the wrong phrase to use. But in terms of caring, they care. But it doesn't. It's not going to look like it because the team are losing every week and it's shambolic, and it's not easy to show you care in a losing team week in, week out. I'm not. I can't defend them, but I will say that there is a reason why they're always the same players who are relied upon.
I think the idea certainly with O'Shea this season was he was going to play a bit part role. I think it was good. I think it was good news for them in the summer when he signed the deal. It was good news for the club. I think everyone was happy. You've got the old head there, someone to help the youngsters through. And I don't think the plan was. I mean, I think he's pretty much played every game. Just about.
Off the pitch, he's brilliant. I mean, off the pitch, he's brilliant. Sorry, off the pitch, but in the dressing room, he is seen as a crucial figure. He always has been throughout his career. He's very sensible. He nurses other players through things, and he plays that kind of captain's role, and he does that kind of very, very well. I mean, I like him a lot, but I mean, as I say, all these players are going to be associated with the failure of the last few years. So
I had a sit down with Chris Coleman a couple of months ago, and I asked him that exact question about O'Shea and Cattermole and what they bring, and he was very strong in his views that they are a massive part of it for him. He said they've been great behind the scenes. I know, as George says, it doesn't look like that on the pitch when you look at results, but I think it's more. I think it's difficult for supporters because I think you're obviously looking for someone to blame.
Yeah.
And listen, we've all been there. I'm a football supporter myself. You do
and
do that.
they've been around for a long time, so it's obvious.
And I think they would both privately admit that they probably needed a fresh start, but it hasn't arrived. I suppose John O'Shea probably thought the fresh start was in the Championship. It's a lesser level, but then he needs kind of legs about him, and the other players who you guys are talking about O'Shea and Cattermole. They look at Coney, how much he's regressed in 2 years, and
it's mind-boggling.
That was a guy who the club turned down a bid. I think it was 17.5-18 million pounds for him. So, I think they're easy targets. Those two, I do think they're easy targets. But I think you could go through the entire squad and you'd struggle to pick two players who've got past mark.
I would say about them that they've always wanted to be at Sunderland, and you can't say that about everybody.
One player you might not be able to say that about is Jack Rodwell. What do you make of that situation? Because that's something that really rankles.
Put a pound in the swear box.
Yeah, we don't like the word Jack Rodwell, but that's something that really rankles with the Sunderland fans. Is he's on 70 grand a week in the Championship, doesn't play, doesn't make himself available.
Yeah, it's a staggering situation. I think I said to you before we started, I kind of knew Lee Congerton, got to know him moderately well, and when they signed Jack Rodwell, I remember him saying, "We have signed a future England captain," or "We think we've signed a future England captain." Now that may have been pie in the sky then, but to think about how his reputation has dipped since then, and he hasn't. I hate don't want to be kind of personal about it. But he doesn't look like a footballer. He doesn't. When you see him on the pitch, he doesn't look like a footballer.
Looks scared, doesn't he?
And he is his own person, and he's as I say, doesn't look like a footballer, but he's also a very potent symbol to Sunderland's folly, and signing him and not giving him the same relegation clause that everybody else had, and giving him those wages and giving him that contract and all that kind of thing. He's come to kind of represent what's happened. He's come to represent some of those really awful decisions. It's pretty horrible to think that he would prefer to stay here and accept that money and not play. And he did have chances to get out in January. I was told at the time he was close to going to an MLS club and decided not to. And I know he went on trial wherever it was in. Or no, he had the trial cancelled, didn't he?
Yeah, it's a bit test.
He had a chance to go to an MLS club and allegedly turned that down. And it's one of those things. He is a testament to the club's folly, but he's like the invisible footballer.
Keith, you mentioned about Cattermole and O'Shea and them being good heads in the dressing room and caring. Does Rodwell care about Sunderland AFC?
I can't say I know Jack Rodwell as well as I know the other two that you've mentioned. I interviewed him a few times. I've always found him a really intelligent, nice guy. He's certainly not your average footballer in terms of the way he comes across. I remember speaking to him about his brother who's doing a master's in uni, and he seems to be very intelligent himself. I think looking at it, you have to question whether he still has a love for the game. It looks to me as though maybe he's just lost that, whether that's been years and years of nagging injuries. And let's not put this to one side. Confidence is such an easy thing to say, but it's a massive part of football. And if you've lost your confidence, which a lot of those Sunderland players have, it's so hard to get back. And he just seems to have lost it to an even bigger extent. He's not one of these guys that goes around and causes trouble in a dressing room. I just think he's maybe. He almost comes across as maybe he's almost too nice to be a footballer. You can normally tell if the players have got a bit of nasty streak, and he doesn't seem to have that. But he must have had something to get to that level where he was getting that big move to Man City. But that, and like the Defoe deal by putting the clause in his contract is. When you asked the question at the start of this, and what's the biggest mistake? There's just two we just mentioned. We've forgotten about. There've been so many over the years. They've been made at that managerial level that just. Added together just make this toxic potion that's come to where Sunderland are now. And I think Jack Rodwell, he's training with the youths, training with under 23s. He's injured at present, I'm told, so he's obviously getting treatment there. Chris Coleman trying to keep him aside from the rest of the players. But yeah, it must be a bit of a distraction for the rest of the players having someone like that there who's picking up significantly more money than any of them and not contributing.
And you want players to, particularly at a time like this, to be busting a gut, to kind of be involved, to be part of it, to help. So that feels very painful that he's not doing that. Or if he still has the hunger for the game, then go and rediscover it somewhere else. And it's a real mess.
It is indeed. Colin, did you have a question? You look like you were going to pitch in there.
No, but I have got something interesting that I was looking up today. So,
well, we'll be the judge of that. But
No
I was just looking at the record of Grayson at Sunderland. He was given a hard time by many Sunderland fans. James in particular wasn't a fan. But you look at his record at Sunderland, and it's better than Coleman's. And Coleman, I think, is he getting a free pass? I don't know if that's harsh, but people aren't really questioning him as a manager. We've played 22 games. We've scored 16 goals, conceded 35. We've got a worse points percentage. At least under Grayson, we were sort of scoring goals and looked like we were in games and looked exciting going forward. It just seems to me like
top striker's gone. But
the team just seems to be doesn't look like scoring a goal ever. Like the weekend, they would never have scored if the game went on for another day.
And I will admit to giving Grayson a bit too much stick. I don't think Coleman should be absolved of all blame.
It's like charisma. I'm a fan of Coleman, but charisma goes saving a long way, doesn't it? Coleman a bit at the minute because he's not really getting any stick, and for how bad it's been under him, I think.
But you said, has he got a free pass? I think in some ways he probably has, because I think up to a certain point, because he can say, well, it was a basket case when I arrived and it's still a basket case, and okay, I haven't turned it around, but who could? I think that's a valid argument. I don't know whether that's right or wrong or not, but I think it's certainly a valid argument. But free pass is not quite the right phrase, because if you listen to him at press conferences, he's obviously
he's a broken man.
He's suffering. He is suffering,
and he takes the responsibility on his shoulders.
Yeah, he does.
And I think that's why he is not necessarily getting a free pass, but getting more time, because you can see.
What do you do? Honestly, it's got to the stage. What do you do? Do you just keep sacking manager? Is that what you do?
And who could we get if Coleman went anyway?
Exactly. We, as I said earlier, we were shocked when Coleman took the job at the time. So say if he were to get sacked now, and obviously that's going to cost the club money. Yeah, which they won't want to spend. If they're going to do that now, who are they going to bring in?
I don't think they should sack him. I'm just saying, sort of as a, I don't know, playing kind of devil's advocate on the matter. The record has been poor with Coleman. I just wonder if that is even in the thinking of the club. If they are thinking about that.
No, they're surely not.
And there is that argument to suggest as well that has he got the relevant experience for League One? His record in the Championship. And
whether he would stay or not is a valid question.
Well, he said he would.
Yeah, he said he would.
But he's also said it depends on things like ownership and stuff like that, doesn't he? And so, that's up in the air.
I've got a question from Tom Atkinson here. How bad can this situation get? Hundreds of millions of debt owed, a squad incapable of finding a win, want away owner, seemingly little in the way of potential investment. When will this slide halt?
I think Keith probably knows more. You talk about Rangers.
Yeah, yeah. The situation, what happened with Rangers was they had a tax case looming, which they called the big tax case, which was for a good few £100 million, and I think the feeling was that Rangers were probably going to lose that, and David Murray sold the club to Craig White for £1, essentially handed it over for nothing, and Rangers supporters were absolutely delighted with that, and they thought we've got a man in here who's going to, and then of course he took the club into administration, passed on to someone else who then took it into liquidation. There was a catalogue of mistakes here. At least Ellis Short is kind of still there, and I think you just need to be careful what you wish for when it comes to a takeover, because you just don't know what the thoughts of someone else. At least Ellis Short has been around for 9-10 years, and
they're about to drop into League One.
I know, but if you, what do? You just hand it on to someone else? You just hand it on to. It needs to be someone who's got the money to come in and make some kind of.
Well, it does, but it can't carry on as it is. I think that's the point.
George, you could probably get. I think you could probably get out of League One without spending too much money.
Yeah, but he has to be engaged. He hasn't spoken to Coleman. He hasn't. There's no sense that he's engaged or involved. And the track record over the last couple of years shows that he doesn't care. So there are certain he's putting in financial guarantees, I suppose, at the moment, isn't he? But there's no investment. And no, I know exactly what you mean. And there's a similar kind of argument happening up the road. But you have to. There comes a point where is a gamble better than what's happening now? Because at the minute, the club's dying on its arse at the minute.
Yeah, I think with Sunderland, I think you're right. I think with Sunderland, they probably are an example of a gamble needs to be taken. Yeah, because I mean, Yeah, I mean,
you're right. Things can always get worse.
Yeah, they can.
Things can always get worse. That is the absolute truth. Things can always get worse, and we've seen clubs in our region drop out of the Football League, and in terms of Darlington and all that kind of stuff being reformed and things. So things can always get worse, and you have to remember that. But Sunderland is crying out for somebody to come in that has an idea or has a plan, has a bit of ambition, and with any of those things, there's always a risk. But for me, the biggest risk is it stays like this.
Yeah, and the problem is the debt remains. The debt is going to remain there. I mean, it'll be interesting to see. I think in a couple of weeks' time, the financial results will be public.
End of April.
Yes, I mean, so it'll be interesting to see, what difference has been made.
But we'll only get it up to...
Yeah, no, of course, yeah. You're a year behind, aren't you? Yeah. So, but, yeah.
You get a better idea. At the minute, we're working off numbers that are
it goes up to 2 years old. It'll go up to June next year, won't it? So it'll be the relegation season.
But in League One, is someone going to come in and say, right, I'll buy the club, I'll take on the debt when you're in League One? You've not got any kind of TV
I think that's why
deal.
the rumours are so rife about administration, because if he's saying he's going to get rid of it for free, then if he cannot sell it, why would he keep funding it? So why would you not just...
A lot of the debt is owed to him, isn't it? So that thing about giving it away for free, I was always a little bit sceptical about that, because it's not free if he's got debt of 100 million quid, and most of it's to him. I mean, so when Newcastle are up for sale for, say, 300 million, that includes the debt. So if you went by the same accounting thing, you'd be really saying that Newcastle are for sale for 150 quid plus the debt. I mean, so it's just a kind of a different way of looking at it. It's not free if it costs you 100 million quid.
No, that's true. But he'll keep... I mean, apparently he's writing checks of a few £100,000 a month still.
Yeah, I understand he's still sort of paying off a lot of...
Yeah, which is staggering, isn't it?
You just wonder if he just says, fuck it, what's the point? I hope that doesn't happen. I would hate to see the club go to administration, but I suppose if that's what we need to get it back, I suppose as fans, that's certainly how I feel. That's the only thing. Getting rid of him would make me feel like we've.
But do you think a buyer would come in if it went into administration?
Well, I would say so. If you're in,
but where's that buyer now? You would think that somebody would have come in.
Well, I think at the minute it's not.
The problem is the league position mitigates against that. So. And again, once January goes past and new owners can't kind of do anything, then the common reaction is that they wait, because if and when Sunderland do go down, the club loses value again. So you don't sort of buy it now when that's still up in the air.
It's kind of similar with Newcastle, isn't it? That's why there's been such a standoff there, because every point or every win was crucial as to what league Newcastle going to play in next season. And I think that's why there's been.
If Newcastle go down, they're immediately halved in value. So I mean, it doesn't kind of really make sense for someone to kind of come in at this exact minute. But yeah, it's a hell of a debt. It is a hell of a debt to sort of have, and I'm sure it's been paid down a bit now, but it's a hell of a debt to carry into League One, and it kind of does affect the value, obviously.
Do you think we can still attract players in League One? Are Sunderland going to be an attractive proposition given the calamitous nature of the club at the moment?
It depends.
We'll be a big club down there.
It depends what happens. I mean, if it's as things are now, then you're not going to get the players. You're not going to get the players you want. But if it's a club that is kind of reinvented and is showing some ambition and is giving opportunities to youth, for example. There's no reason why not. I mean, I know historically we've sort of heard a lot about players not wanting to come to the North East, but I think it's actually proved that when the circumstances are right and the club's right and they have a good manager, an ambitious manager, and they have decent owners, I think players do come. So I've never, would you want to come to a stadium that's sort of empty and disillusioned and unhappy? Then probably not. But if I'm sure a lot of Sunderland fans of kind of my vintage remember the season, the last time the club dropped down to that level, and it was a good season. It ended up being it ended up being one of people's favourite seasons because of what happened. So I don't think, I also don't think
it would be amazing to think. I was walking back, I was just wandering around the stadium like after the Ipswich match, and I was just like, could you imagine this place in League One? Like, honestly, like you'd need to have it fairly full, because it must be a pretty difficult place to play in when it's when it is empty, almost. And because obviously the noose that's been hanging around the neck with the run and the last couple of years at Stadium Light, you almost think Sunderland might be better playing somewhere else in League One and packing somewhere. You know what I mean? And actually like getting a real, because it's so hard to get it going.
As fans as well, we've talked about it a lot, James. Like, I used to think of that ground as a happy place. I used to be. I spent all my childhood. I never saw Roker Park because I was too young. All my childhood's there. I was seeing them 7th, the Keane years, even 10 years in the Premier League.
Derby wins.
Now
the atmosphere that when Jermaine Defoe scored that goal against Newcastle that day. Honestly, that was, other than an Old Firm derby, I don't think I've ever heard a noise like that. It was unbelievable.
I found
it was, and to think that was only what 2 years ago, was it?
Yeah.
2.5 years ago.
And Reed's team, the memory of that, the memory of that team there, the young team. That was a young team and an exciting team and a vibrant team and all that kind of stuff, playing incredible football, wingers banging in crosses, scoring loads of goals. It was, it has the potential to be a really raucous venue. I suppose the problem is that it's like everywhere else in the country. The way we view football and partake in football has kind of changed, and stadiums in general are quieter. But there has to be something that happens that gives people that desire to go there, to be there. Because at the minute you associate it with unpleasant things.
We've touched on the stadium as well, and we mentioned the relegation season before where we ended up in League One. We were at Roker Park then.
Yeah,
having the stadium of Light in League One could be a real problem financially.
Well, Leeds used to play in front of 20,000 when they were in there. That was probably their average. Used to play in front of less. I mean, my cousin's a Leeds fan. He used to say, like, sometimes they would say 20, it was probably only 15, 14 there. It would be sorry to see something like that. I remember it being. It's only 2 years ago since they beat Chelsea at home 3-2, and it was full.
There's different ways of looking at it, because I agree, if there were to be, if the stadium's a third full or whatever it is, then it's not going to look great. The other way of looking at it, the more positive way of looking for it, is that Sunderland still has a lot going for it, and the stadium's part of it, and the training ground's another part of it. So they've got the infrastructure in place, so that's not something that the ownership would kind of have to worry about. They would only have to concentrate on finding a way to get the stadium full again. Yeah. So,
but if you do go down to League One, and you get off to a decent start, however, I'm sure the Sunderland fans will come back.
Oh yeah,
because let's be honest, you just want to win games. You just want to see your team winning games, whoever it is you're playing against, and you've not had that for so long.
If there's 28,000 there now, they're not winning, then I'm sure 28,000 will be there when they win the league.
Clubs like Bradford have been very, very progressive in terms of their ticket pricing and things like that, and they've taken the decision that, whether financially what it would mean to Sunderland is a sort of different question, but they've taken the decision that it's not the money that ticket sales bring in that's the relevant thing. It's about having a full stadium. So if you half ticket prices and end up with a full stadium, that is better economically in the long run for the club. And it's about, you need someone with that kind of wit and ambition to make the team exciting and make the stadium
the ticket prices have just been reduced. They announced that the other day. I think they've gone down
310.
Yeah, 310 is the lowest. I think it works out something like 13 quid a game.
It's not bad,
So
but considering it's £60 cheaper when they're in the Premier League,
This is very true.
Is that for next season?
Yeah. I mean, tickets have been loaded, and I think, Sunderland rightly get a lot of bad press for the way the club.
Oh, I know, and I'm not having a go at them for their ticket prices. But I'm saying, I can't remember. Was it even Huddersfield that are doing 100 quid season tickets in the Premier League this season? And I know being in the Premier League is very different.
Yeah.
So, but taking a so I mean, when bad things happen to clubs, when it was Manchester City when they went down and stuff like that, it becomes a point of honour for fans sometimes
to see
it and a siege mentality. But there has to be. It can't be with this atmosphere, because won't be the case. It needs somebody to come in. It needs the team to be giving a damn. exciting, preferably with young players coming through. But it needs leadership at the top.
I think
there's none of that at the moment.
There's also the stadium being 49,000 is a problem. But on the flip side, that means you can charge far less to get more people in to make up that difference in money.
Exactly.
Would they rather have 15,000 there, but be charging the prices they are, reduce it?
I mean, again, it depends. That all depends again on atmosphere and leadership. Because at the minute you could give tickets away and people wouldn't go.
Yeah,
because there's no reason for people to come at the minute. So,
aye. Well, we're drawing close to the end, so I thought we'll try and lift the mood a bit, because it's still really depressing talking about Sunderland, really. Just any final anecdotes? You've both been in the industry for final
anecdotes.
What are the funniest things, funny stories?
That's a bit vague.
Come on, George, you've been around a bit longer than me.
No pressure.
That's a bit of a vague question. You not narrow that down slightly.
Well, is there anything in particular a player's done which has been particularly stupid or funny? Or
Christ almighty, that's a long list. I was once pinned against a wall at Roker Park by Peter Reid. That was quite funny. Yeah. That was, don't get me wrong, that was not funny. That was absolutely terrifying. I was scared of that was sort of a different era. I was very new at the Sunday Sun, the local Sunday paper, and I'd written something about a pre-season match, and it was a bad joke at the start of a match report, but and he was a very, very angry man at the time. But I remember walking into this box at Roker Park to do our pre-season supplement. Hi, Peter, George from the Sunday Sun. The Sunday Sun? The Sunday fucking Sun? You fucking... Anyway, I kind of gradually reversed and was sort of pinned back against the wall and sort of left feeling very shaken and very tearful, and thought, well, what do I do here? This is awful. Anyway, I rang him back. I rang immediately, and he agreed. He agreed to see us the next day and sort of said, "Oh, don't worry, mate. We're best mates. But if you ever do anything like that ever again, I will fuck you up." By the end, I was friendly with Peter, and I loved him dearly. But a bit of passion like that around the place would not go amiss.
Keith, yourself?
Oh yeah, trying to think. I actually have had a similar incident with that, like that, but I'm not able to tell you at the moment. It wasn't with Peter.
Still
Reid.
the subject of legal action.
Yeah. Let me think. I mean, listen, I used to work for...
What's the worst thing you've said on air? What's the biggest error you've done on air? How about that?
Okay. Error. Well, I'll tell you what, the thing that gave me the biggest fright, and it just felt like an outer body experience, was Rangers were playing against Manchester United in a Champions League match, and we had a live with Sir Alex Ferguson, and I was very young, just started out, and I just had a complete brain freeze, like completely just forgot what I was saying. I was doing a live, and what I used to do is I used to try and do live, and I would try and almost write it down in my head and word for word and try and think exactly what I was going to say. And I got to a certain word and forgot what I was going to say, and I just completely lost it. And I was there, and I've got Sir Alex Ferguson standing there beside me, and you can imagine, and it honestly just felt like 10 minutes. I mean, it was probably only like 5 seconds, but it just felt, and I was just so panicked. And ever since that day, I've never done that now. Just if I'm doing a live or whatever, I just make a couple of bullet points and just try and take it from there. But I was just like, of all times, it couldn't have been when you're doing a chat with, like, a League 2 manager or a player from an amateur team or something. It had to be. Okay? He was all right. I think he realised that I think I was actually properly shaking. And it was just, the only way I can explain it, I was speaking to one of my fellow reporters actually recently, because I was down doing the transfer centre down in London, so I was on set in the studio, and when you're not used to being down there in Skysport News, it can be quite sort of a galling experience. All the cameras are on. And he said to me, he goes, "How did you?" And I did my first one. He goes, "How did you do that? And I'm not used to really using auto cue that much either." And I was like, "I don't know. I just kind of got through." He goes, I did a live the other day, and I had one of those out of body experiences. I know all about them. I know exactly what you mean. But thankfully, I got through the stuff in the studio there, and it was okay. But yeah, I mean, that does happen. Your heart skips a beat, and you actually think it's a lot worse, and then you kind of watch it back, and you're like, "Oh, it didn't actually seem that bad." I don't know if but I probably shaved 5 years off my life.
Yeah.
So
they got the grey in the beard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Any questions, Colin?
Yeah, the Bobby Robson Fund. You're still heavily involved in.
That's Bobby Robson Foundation. Yes, thank you very much for mentioning that. Yeah, no, I'm a patron of that, and that's one of the proudest, well, probably the proudest association.
Well, until you came on this podcast, obviously.
Obviously, it's all right. Well, this is the absolute pinnacle.
Very highly thought of, Bobby Robson, by Sunderland fans.
And he loved right until the end. He loved coming.
Why do you think he loved Sunderland so much? I mean, there's rumours that he was a Sunderland lad as a kid.
Well, he's from Durham. I mean, so he had that. So he looked. I mean,
did he not go to both? Did he not go to? Yeah.
Yeah. He was a Newcastle fan. His dad was a Newcastle fan. And he went to St James's with his brother and his dad and things like that. So that was but it was that era when people would kind of go to both. And throughout his life, he went to both. And certainly towards the end, he felt he got such a lovely welcome at Sunderland.
He was always
It's book's excellent.
He loved it. And as a he was kind of Langley Park pit he went to and stuff like that. It was Langley Park he went to school. He looked down to Durham first ahead of looking to Newcastle as a place. So he has a very, very strong Wearside connection. But then it's also partly to do with his personality, I think. And I mean, I'm always very, very moved by people who can straddle the divide and still get sort of respect. I think Mark Quinn is a kind of similar to that.
Not until he's on commentary on Sky doing a derby game.
Maybe until then. But I think, and I think Bobby had that. I think Bobby sort of had that respect wherever he went, and it was partly to do with his personality. There was nowhere for kind of hate to kind of grow inside him. He just never had that. That was just never part of his personality. And when he set up the foundation, he would go to the Stadium of Light and he would end up with £5 notes sticking out of his pocket. People would give him money. And Lady Elsie is with us. Is still a regular at the stadium. She gets a great welcome. She loves being there. And that is the whole point of the foundation, I suppose. He wrote in his last book, that cancer takes no count of colour, black and white, red and white, we're all the same. And over 10 years, more than 12 million quid's been raised that is being used for world-class research here in the northeast, but also treating people, and also so it's going from incredibly advanced machinery to staffing nursing positions that are trying to help put smiles on people's faces. So it's a great. I think that legacy is arguably his biggest legacy of all.
Good stuff.
I've got one final.
Go on.
Actually, two final things.
Yeah.
Number one, what is the funniest but most offensive thing someone said to you on Twitter?
Oh God.
You must get them daily.
And we'll preface this. We had one the other week where somebody said...
I've got that one on my phone. Look.
Somebody said to us that we hadn't seen tits. Yeah. No, we'd only seen tits in porn.
Yeah.
Suggesting that we were virgins, even though we both got girlfriends. Which I did debate.
It must be a nightmare, the whole Twitter thing, because I mean, me and Connor aren't exactly Twitter famous or anything, but we get responses, and most of them are nice and engaging. You have conversations, and then you just get the odd one where it's just like, oh, you're a cunt, you.
Well, do you know what? I don't mind. I actually don't mind if someone's just being abusive. It doesn't bother me at all. It's when they question your
sources or whatnot.
No, not even that, but just
impartiality.
Yeah, and they almost. Ask, are you Newcastle fan, you're Sunderland fan? Yeah.
Well, apparently you two are both mags.
Do I sound like a Newcastle fan?
No. I thought you were a Hibs fan.
I'll be honest, I grew up a Newcastle fan, but I mean, and it's something that, I mean, it sort of drives us mad. It drove us mad at the start. It doesn't drive us mad anymore, but I mean, I've been doing this job for 25 years of my life, and I take it really seriously. And over the course of that time, I've made lifelong friends at Sunderland, and what it's done is widen my support. So I mean, if people say you're biased, I will say, yeah, I am. I'm biased about all North East football clubs, because professionally I want them to do well, but personally I want them to do well. And
but you said before to us off camera that you were TFL when they came out the top.
Oh no, off camera. Yeah. Well, no, and you make relationships and you build relationships. I'm delighted when Newcastle win. I'm delighted when Sunderland win. I was emotional about Newcastle getting back into the Premier League. So I know what that means for the city, and I know what it means for the club, and I know what it means for friends of mine. But the same thing applies to Sunderland. And the most emotional I felt at a game sort of in recent years was the League Cup final, because it was that beautiful reminder that really that's what football's about. Not winning things necessarily, but everyone getting together. You go through all the shit, you go through the years of crap and nothing happening and seeing a load of rubbish football, and then suddenly you have this set piece occasion that reminds you really what it's all about, and why your dad or your mum got you involved in the first place and why you put up with it. And, you know, you had that beautiful celebration and a kind of raucous night out in Covent Garden. And I was in tears when Sunderland came out onto the pitch, you know. And I've seen I've seen one trophy in the 25 years I've been covering North East football. And it's those occasions like Wembley will stay with us forever because it doesn't happen very often.
We want to be reporting on teams doing well.
Of
We want
course.
to be reporting on successes. Of course, that's what gets you into this, you know. And it hurts when people think that you're happy to see a certain team lose or a demise of a team. Of course not. The other thing is our jobs are probably on, you know, at the end of it as well. We need the teams to be success. So we want that, you know. And it's depressing for us as much as the supporters when any of the teams that you cover on that patch. One of my colleagues who covers the Midlands had Leicester 2 years ago, and he said he just had the most amazing season.
Unbelievable.
And he's not. I don't know who he supports. It doesn't really matter because, to be honest, when you get to a certain level when you're reporting this, you don't really support anyone anyway. You look at things impartially. So he had the most amazing year. You know, reporting on them every week. He was doing feature stories and colour shoots every single week, and it's a shame that when you're reporting, say if Sunderland aren't doing too well or Newcastle aren't, the clubs kind of close their doors a little bit. And it's difficult to get access. Whereas if a team's doing well like Leicester that season, their doors are wide open. Come and get what you want, and he just had the most amazing experience. And it's improved him as a reporter.
I mean, in terms of the Twitter insults, I can't remember. I mean, it's mainly just swearing, but it does, and some of it's quite inventive, and it does either make you laugh or stay with you sometimes, which is kind of, you know, it's annoying that it's the insult that stays with you as opposed to the nice stuff. I remember not too long after I joined the Times, I suffered from proper writer's block. I went to a match at Leeds. I didn't watch Leeds very often, and I just could not think. So this was a Monday match report. So I saw the game on the Saturday, had to come home, write it up on the Sunday for the Monday's paper, and I couldn't think of anything. And on the Saturday night, got home, there was just nothing in my head. Anyway, I woke up in the middle of the night. Something had come to us, and I wrote it down. Anyway, it went in the paper, and it was horrible. It was about trying to capture this moment in time of this young Leeds team, and the first sentence was something like, the camera clicks, the action stops, right? It was about trying to capture this moment in time. It didn't get any better than after that. It was horrible. Anyway, Football 365, they do their like media watch section, and you know, and you're always clicking on it hoping that one of your mates has been slagged off, whatever. Anyway, I clicked on it that Monday, and there was a bit about this whole match report, and it dissected every line in this match report. But the headline, which I'll never forget, and I've printed it off, and it's still above my desk now as a reminder: sixth form essay winner found at Times, which I loved, and it was absolutely right. I'll say I loved it. It was really humiliating.
20 years on though.
Does that drive you on though?
Still drives me on. It doesn't stop us from occasionally writing stuff that would be worthy of a sixth form essay.
Well, one of the things that got probably the biggest traffic for me on Twitter once, and not by design, was it was the night before deadline day, and a Newcastle fan message saying, where are you going to be tomorrow, Newcastle or Sunderland? And I said, we only send a designated reporter to Premier League club. And obviously Newcastle in the Championship in it. So of course the following season I then just did it the other way around, so to make sure I was like but I was just looking through a few of those that I sent to my mate, and this is one that I don't want to read it out myself, but there's just one of an example of
My name's Keith, Keef, and I shag my Sky microphone. My job is to report people arriving at their fucking place of work and hassle them.
That's just an example of many. I mean, we could flick through. I've got quite a lot of them saved in the group chat, but that's probably the least offensive one of all.
My job is to report on people arriving
do that though.
places of work is actually sort of true.
Yeah, I know. I agreed with it, so I liked it. Yeah.
I get annoyed.
It's because it's true.
There was a one the other week where Mahrez had turned up to training and Sky was all over it. They're like, and like, he came to work.
Man turns up for job.
Man turns up for job. And everyone's
But
like,
not too
Mahrez
much of
turns up.
football stands up to scrutiny. I mean, it's like, you know, lads kicking a ball of air around, I mean, Christ, and us getting very serious about it. But
Yeah, we do get very serious about it, don't we?
Oh no, I get hammered. I don't know if your wives or partners are hammer you, but my girlfriend just didn't understand. She's like, you dedicate your life to this. I'm like, well, it's class.
Mine regularly asks me if I'm still trying to be Twitter famous, and I was like, that's not what I'm trying to do.
Have you seen their tits yet? Just out of interest to get to the end of that story?
Yeah, many times.
Okay, good.
We can
Well, it's a bit defensive, that, but yeah, okay.
we can confirm tits have been seen.
Okay, good.
For all those concerned Twitter users.
Do you know what? There's one final thing: is have you ever spoke to Ellis Short?
Yes.
What's he like?
I
think everyone wants you to say he's a massive knob.
In fact, I wrote something about the League Cup final, and he sent me an email because he liked it, and he did. In fact, it might have been around then that there was a drinks before the night before the Wembley game that he'd arranged, and I went to it, but I didn't want to be there. I wanted to be at Covent Garden, so I didn't stay very long, but I said hello. He used to come into the press room at Sunderland when he was around and engaged, and he would often go and speak to the local radio reporters in particular, but there was a couple of times that he would stop, and he'd obviously been told who a certain reporter was, and he just to let you know, that was a load of shit or whatever like that. He did a bit of that. So yes, I met him in those environments, but it's not really enough to make judgments on him in that sense. But as I said earlier, I've kept in touch with several people who've worked for him, and the references are not glowing about him as a human being.
Keith, do you have much
once or twice, like George, just again fleeting. I've certainly not sat down and had a cup of coffee or anything like that with him. No. I had a chat after, what game was it now? I think it was just after the escape with Allardyce with one of his right hand men, Per Magnus, who was up for a few days. But I haven't spoken to Ellis Short for any length of time. Certainly in the last couple of years he's been almost absent. I think it was the first game of the season. He was there against Derby. He came to watch that.
I was shocked.
I have seen him a couple of times in the press room and going around and speaking to a couple of people, but not for a long time. For a long time have I ever seen him do that. But yeah, I think it's the way it is with clubs these days. It's very rare does anyone have too many dealings with the owner of clubs. The fact that Chris Coleman hasn't spoken to him, I think says it all.
Incredible, incredible. Thing. And that statement that he released sort of about then. Well, no, that was when Grayson left, wasn't it?
Well, the video
that wasn't conducted
was
by
horrendous.
It was all in house.
Yeah, and it was all that thing about. Yes, I know things are tough, but we all have to get behind the team, and yes, I'm hearing you and all that kind of stuff. But again, that was another sort of demand to sort of defer judgment. And really, it's Ellis. When is it okay with you that we do judge you? At what point is it all right for us to say
it's been shit?
This has been shit. Yeah. And anyway, that seems to be happening. So,
anything else to add, Connor? While you're on?
No, not really. You can follow us on Twitter, though. I can add his 2 famous followers.
Connor Bromley trying to get the Twitter followers.
You can share. Do a follow Friday. That used to be a thing.
Yeah, used to be. Yeah, used to be that.
Right. Well, thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Just before we go, a couple of housekeeping announcements. As we mentioned earlier, the Red and White Army are holding a meeting tomorrow night at the Peacock at 7. If you want to try and make a difference to your club, then this is important. They'll be discussing the direction they want to move in, so seize the opportunity and get involved. Once again, thanks to Connor for coming in. Producer Chris, cheers, just hanging around in the background. Keith and George, thank you again. Remember to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. We're on YouTube as well. You can also find the podcast on Acast, and check out our content across Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and the rokerreport.com. I've been James Copley. Thanks for listening. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.